what are the cities? The cities are, as you've probably gathered, supernormal yogic powers. Everything from like advanced kind of intuition to like knowing the arrangement of the stars, to having just being able to see subtle beings, the Siddhis and the Devatas and so forth, to being able to actually make the body light and even fly through the air, walk through walls, invisibility, more spectacular things like that. And that requires not only a huge integration of consciousness, but like years of practice to open those channels between consciousness and the body and the layers of the body, which actually is inclusive of the mind in the Indian system. Ultimately, though, you could say that the cities represent the ability to manifest anything from, as I say, like simple things, even like developing your character to have more compassion, more friendliness, more loving kindness. So you can develop that, fairly simple, to these more spectacular abilities. And then everything in between. And so how does that work? How does it happen? I love this one analogy in the Upanishads. And my first teacher, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, used this a lot. And it's the analogy of the banyan seed, which is a very small seed, I understand. I haven't seen one myself. But the tree, the banyan tree, or the banyan tree, whichever you prefer, is a huge tree. And so and if you break open this banyan seed, it's actually hollow in the middle. And so the analogy goes like this, that it's from that hollowness of the banyan seed that all of the tree springs. The whole tree comes from that hollowness, that emptiness. Likewise, at the core of creation is an emptiness. And physics today calls it the quantum field vacuum state. As far as I know, I'm not a physicist. I know that I've heard physicists talk about that there is this state of emptiness, a vacuum state, from which all the subatomic particles actually manifest. Everything springs from there. And so at the core of creation is this emptiness, and you are part of the creation. So at your core, likewise, there is that emptiness. And when we meditate, we actually go to deeper and deeper, finer and finer levels of experience. And the object of meditation becomes subtler and subtler and subtler until it dissolves altogether. And then we're left experiencing or abiding in that emptiness at the core of our being. And because we are conscious, that emptiness is one with pure awareness. It's our awareness. We're aware of, let's say we're meditating on a mantra. So we meditate on a mantra. It gets subtler and subtler, finer and finer. It dissolves altogether. We're not asleep. What's left is just awareness itself. Okay, so we're abiding in pure awareness. We're abiding in that emptiness at the core of our being, which is the same as the emptiness at the core of everything. And so that is the source from which everything springs. And the whole idea of the cities is that it's one thing in meditation to be able to experience that emptiness, but it's another thing to gain such facility that you can transcend really just about into that emptiness, and right on the surface of that emptiness begin to function and stir that emptiness to manifest your desire. And that is the secret of the cities. Totally. That's all it is. And so if you look at that emptiness, there's a couple of aspects to it. One is its awareness. Okay, like I was just describing, aware of a mantra at one level, subtler, 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 it dissolves, and then you're still aware. It's just awareness that's unbounded without an object. So it's emptiness / awareness. And so that's one aspect of it. But the other aspect of it is it's also unbounded potential energy. So it's pure consciousness, pure intelligence. Consciousness and intelligence are very closely related, and at the same time, pure energy. So you could say pure creative intelligence. That's a term that my first teacher used a lot. But that is the source of all the laws of nature. And so once we're abiding in that source of all the laws of nature, if we can stir that pure consciousness towards manifesting our desire, then the laws of nature kind of get behind that, you could say. And so the laws of nature start to facilitate that. And at the same time, because we're abiding in that pure awareness, we can't desire anything that nature doesn't want in the first place. It's got to be an evolutionary desire. That's the one sort of condition, because if you're abiding, if you're one with pure consciousness, then it's not your ego that can decide what it wants. It has to be something that's in harmony with the intention of evolution, the evolutionary processes of nature. So you're functioning from the home of all nature, laws of nature, the home of all evolution. And so whatever you desire at that point, it's not my will, but it's thy will, you could say. And so this is why the Siddhis can be effective and why you can manifest from that deep level of consciousness. So, and of course, now this actually, I did want to say one thing, you know, there has been, and I don't know when it started, recent decades, the talk of the law of attraction and manifestation. It's a very popular kind of concept. And on the one hand, you can see, I would say there's a lot of validity to that. And I know it's been poo-pooed by scientists and so on, fine, that's all right. But there is a principle there that is valid, and it's basically what I just talked about. However, it also gives way too much credit to the conscious thinking level. Conscious thought is actually a very weak, stale level of thinking. It doesn't have a lot of juice to it. It doesn't have a lot of creative power to it. So it's not really the case that you can mold your life and create whatever you want simply by thinking about it or positive thinking and so on, because that's just it's just engaging the conscious thinking mind, which is a fraction of your real consciousness, of your full mind. And so it gives way too much credit to the conscious mind. Actually, there's going to be other currents, subconscious currents, that may obstruct that conscious intention. Like, let's say you want to, have wealth or whatever it might be, or you want to be very successful in a certain field. Well, you may, because you haven't experienced that, you may have serious doubts in your subconscious. You may, question whether you're worthy, whatever. You may be afraid of success or afraid of failure. These different currents in the subconscious are going to obstruct that. Like, there's not a coherent kind of consciousness, and so you can't manifest your desire simply by thinking about it. And usually what happens is you have to really throw yourself into work, and you work towards your goals, and you spend, years working towards them, and you have iterative, kind of successes or incremental successes, and you overcome certain, obstacles and failures and so on. And that gradually aligns your consciousness, because we tend to believe in a cause and effect universe. This is very much imprinted in our mind. We believe in a cause and effect universe. And so it's a stretch to think, oh, just by thinking of something, I can manifest it. There's so many layers of the subconscious that's going to say, well, is that really true? I don't know about that, And so it's only by really a lot of work and a lot of engaging activity that we start to believe that we can do something as we see, successes. And that aligns our consciousness so that finally, we are that success. We have earned that. It has become who we are. And sure enough, our thoughts are manifesting. And so that is the experience of successful people. And that's where this whole law of manifestation comes into play. But it does require that. Whereas the yogis, they also have to work very hard. There's a lot of practice. But it's a practice that doesn't just give you the result of the success in the world. Because what happens is, in order to be successful at the yogic way of fulfilling desire, you have to go through a lot of personal growth and evolution. So it's an internal, like the ordinary way of life is very externally oriented. The yogic way of life, very internally oriented. And so it's only by gaining a lot of purity of consciousness, like very transparent consciousness, clear, being able to function at that innermost silent levels of the depths of your mind, of your awareness, that you can be successful. So it's a whole different ballgame. And in doing that, you gain fulfillment before you even have any manifestation of desire, because that state of wholeness, of infinitude, of realizing the infinite universal value of yourself brings you ultimate fulfillment that you can't get anything out here anyway. And then you can act from that fulfillment, and whatever nature wants to produce, it will produce through you. You will become an instrument. So that is actually, it's kind of interesting, the whole Siddhis aspect. It's a little bit of a carrot. There's a story of this merchant who lost a coin. He was, fairly frugal fellow, to say the least. And he lost a coin in a field, and he started looking for that coin. And he's actually spent days looking for it, because he thought if he could find that coin and invest it well, it could grow and become, all kinds of wealth. So he looked for it and looked for it and looked for it. And in the process of looking for that coin, he found a gem. And it wasn't just an ordinary gem, it was the wish-fulfilling gem, that anyone who owned this, any wish they had would come true. And so the Siddhis are kind of like that. The coin is the Siddhis. It sounds all wonderful. Manifest desires, supernormal powers. Many people might be attracted to that. Actually, maybe no one in this group really cares about that. That's fine too. But so there's that aspect. But then what you actually find is this wish-fulfilling gem, which is that wholeness of awareness. It is liberation. It is enlightenment. That's what you actually get through this process. And so that's why actually this course is so exciting to me, because it is, on the one hand, about the sort of yogic art of manifestation, but far more so, it's about all that it takes to develop your consciousness fully and to rise to, self-realization and enlightenment. And that's a big thing. It's a big word, but that's what's really it's about. And so the Siddhis in Patanjali, we're going to talk about this in just a second, but Patanjali actually tells us exactly how to successfully do these Siddhis. And it's a process that he calls samyama. And samyama is a combination of dharana. Now I'm using some Sanskrit words here. I don't want to lose people. I want to really, relate to so that you can follow this. But let me just indulge and get these three words out. Dharana, which just means a fixity of awareness. Okay, so it's often translated as concentration. I don't really like that translation because that implies effort. And actually, if you make an effort, then that keeps the mind on the surface, and that is a problem. That means it won't be effective. We want to go to a very subtle level of consciousness, so we can't be making an effort. So concentration is out. That's not dharana. Dharana just means a fixity of awareness. And that we can do effortlessly. Okay, and we'll talk about how to do that. So dharana, fixity of awareness, and then dhyan means a steady flow of awareness on the same point or the same knowledge. So dhyana actually is meditation. So dharana combined with dhyan, so you have your awareness fixed on a point. Now that awareness flows on that same point in a steady way without interruption from other thoughts and so on. Okay, then that is the beginning of samyama. Now one other factor, and that is samadhi. In this context, samadhi means such an absorption in that experience of dharana and dhyan that even you forget about the self that is meditating. So it's actually a state of no self. You know, in Buddhism, this is a very common concept. It's not so common in other systems, so it may seem a new idea. But it's such absorption in that experience of dharana and dhyan that on the object of meditation, that the self is completely forgotten. There is a state of no self, a state of unbounded awareness, and that means a full 100% engagement of awareness in that flow of attention on one point. And that is samyama. And actually, so really what Patanjali did is he simply articulated the obvious. If we want to manifest from that emptiness of pure consciousness, from that emptiness of the banyan seed that is the core of all creation, if we're going to manifest from there, how do we do it? Of course, we have to have a focus, dharana. We have to keep that focus as awareness is flowing and stirring that, because we have to stir that pure intelligence, because it's only through stirring that we activate prana or shakti, the energy aspect of consciousness, which will manifest. And it has to be from a completely selfless place. It can't be the ego sitting there doing this, or it's not going to work. It had that weight of the ego. Again, it's an impurity. It won't work from the ego level. It has to be where the self is completely forgotten, where there's unbounded awareness, this state of no self, and then we can manifest successfully, stirring that emptiness that is at the core of creation, the core of our being. So that's the whole system of samyama. It's not mysterious. It's actually just an articulation of what it would be obviously needed to manifest from the level of pure consciousness. I mean, how else would you do it? You have to stir it somehow with a steady flow of attention. So the siddhis, what are the siddhis? In the Yoga Sutras, we'll see there's a lot of kind of formulas that Patanjali teaches. And he says, okay, if you do samyama on this, you get this result. You do samyama on this, you get this result. For instance, just to give you an example, samyama on the sun or the solar entrance in the body, you gain knowledge of all the heavenly regions. Okay, samyama on the moon or the lunar entrance, you gain knowledge of the arrangement of all the stars. Just things like this. There's many, many different formulas, and we're going to explore and play with some of these. But what they are is actually tests of the clarity of your consciousness. They're actually a test of a couple of things. First of all, the clarity of your consciousness. Is your awareness so transparent that you can successfully do this? Do you have that purity, that necessary purity of consciousness? Secondly, have you opened the channels of coordination between consciousness and the layers of the body? Okay, and maybe you're familiar with those layers, the panchakosha, you know, the panchakosha, the 5 layer sheaths, they're called. Annamaya kosha, the sheath of food, this physical body, That's one layer. Okay, so if you have full coordination with pure consciousness, with that emptiness at the core of creation to the physical body, then you're going to gain, you have mastery over these physical cities like levitation, invisibility, these kinds of things. Okay, so that's a very profound level of coordination. If you have absolute full coordination between pure consciousness and this physical body, the grossest level of your being, you will have that class of cities. Okay, then there are other layers to your body, pranamaya kosha. Okay, so the energetic body, and we'll talk about that later. But then we have also manamaya kosha, the layer of mind. Okay, so the jnanamaya kosha, a subtler layer of intellect, where you're going to have, if you gain coordination between pure consciousness and vijnanamaya kosha, then you're going to have Ritambara pragya, they call it, which is a level of clarity of consciousness where anything you think of, you experience. Like you can think, oh, the taste of the moon, and you'll have the taste of the moon. You want to know what some galaxy looks like, you know, far distant galaxy. You just have the thought of it and it will be there. You want to know what's happening with a friend. You have a thought of it and it will be there. So that will be that level of intuition as you gain coordination between the Jnanamaya kosha and pure consciousness. So then Anandamaya kosha, that's another layer of your being, very subtle. So it's a matter not only of purity, because there can be a case where you're enlightened, you have absolute clarity of consciousness, you abide in the self, and yet you don't have the cities. Who is it? Nisargadatta Maharaj, if you're familiar with him. He wrote, I Am That, or he didn't write that, it's a collection of his talks. And it's a beautiful book, I highly recommend it, I love that book, I Am That, Nisargadatta Maharaj. And in there, somebody asks him, like, you don't seem to show the cities. Well, what's going on? How come you don't have the cities? And he says, well, you know, I just never put any attention on that. I didn't develop those. You know, he's got pure consciousness. He's got this wholeness of awareness, Brahman consciousness, all these terms which you may or may not be familiar with. I'm just talking about enlightenment, basically. He has that, but he hasn't developed the coordination between that consciousness and these layers of his relative being. So there's a whole kind of integration. So the yogic science that Patanjali is talking about is not only about gaining supernormal powers. It's not about that, really. It's also about gaining this full integration of consciousness that can put it to use. Enlightenment isn't just about having pure consciousness, it's about this full integration on all levels. So the heart is completely full and all these different abilities are also there. Not to say you have to use them or even maybe never use them, but there's that full integration.